Connecting with the queue, number 24, Lying Awake. Hello everybody and welcome back to our once a week read aloud. I wasn't able to go into a classroom in the school to read to you today, so I thought I'd bring you aboard my sailboat Solskin and show you a little bit about my other favorite places to be. Today's book, Lying Awake, was written by Helen Furbush and makes me think of my grandson Noah, who one day I'm hoping will wish to come aboard his Papa and Grammy's boat. So here we go, Lying Awake. Lying awake on grandfather's boat, I listen to the noises of the marina. I lie in my bunk as the boat rocks gently and the water slaps softly on the hull. Through the open porthole, I hear the creak of the deck, the cry of the gulls, and the groan of lines as they strain against the pier. I hear the clug, chug, chug of tugs and other boats passing by, and voices calling out hellos and good nights. And I hear the glug, glug, glug of water sloshing and gurgling under the bow of the boat. And I think it sounds just like the tub when you pull the plug. From my bunk, I can smell the fresh salt air and fishy sea water, and it reminds me of the harbor seal I saw swimming in the bay earlier in the day, and of the great blue heron that was standing as still as a statue on the swim step of a boat across the way. And we saw an osprey dive bomb into the water to catch a fish. He completely disappeared and then suddenly splashed back up in the air with a fish tight in his talons. We saw noisy crows trying to chase away an eagle perched high in a tree, and the tall black fins of orcas cruising up the sound on their way out to sea. And grandfather told me orcas usually stay together like peas in a pod. Inside, I can barely smell the musty dustiness of my cabin and the dim, mildewy dampness of old canvas. And I smell the fresh bed sheets that grandfather washed just for me at the laundry in the marina. And I can still smell the molasses crinkle cookies we baked after dinner and then ate while they were warm and soft. And I think nothing's better than cookies baked on grandfather's boat. There's a faint smell of kerosene from the lantern hanging by the table, and I can see its light dancing softly on the walls of the cabin. It looks like the sunlight that sparkled and twinkled on the tide flats when they had stretched way out into the sound at low tide. Grandfather and I walked out to the very edge of the beach, where the ferries, fishing boats, and barges were practically within reach. Outside, I hear the clatter and happy chatter of party on a boat down dock, and I hear gulls right overhead, and I think, gulls are always busy fussing about something. They remind me of the gulls on the tide flats feeding on candlefish that were poking their heads out of holes in the sand. And there were lots of pink, blue, and purple starfish, orange jellyfish, and crabs hiding under rocks and shells. And grandfather told me, on the sand or in the sea, let the jellies be. And everywhere there were sea anemones that sprinkled water when I tickled them with my toes. And I found a huge moon snail that was oozed all the way out of its shell. Grandfather showed me how to rub its slimy tummy until water trickled, then showered out of his body so it could get small enough to go back in. And I think there's always something new to find on the tide flats. Best of all were the gooey ducks. Grandfather told me gooeys are chewy. Don't put them in the pot unless they're for chowder. At low tide, they leave big holes in the beach where they're buried in the sand. When you get too close, they shoot up jets of water to warn you away. I loved to run over their holes to see how many fountains I could get going, and I laughed so hard when grandfather, bending down over a hole, got squirted right smack in the face. Then grandfather laughed at me when I was sprayed on my legs and when I jumped out of the way. Another gooey duck got me on my back. We waded in the freezing cold water of a deep tide channel to cross to another stretch of sand. It was so cold that I thought my feet were going to fall right off. I didn't think I'd make it across, but I did, and after running around a while chasing the gulls, I warmed right up. Suddenly, Grandfather noticed that the tide was coming back in so fast that soon it would snatch up our shoes and that we left on the sand some closer to shore. We ran as fast as we could through pools of shells and seagrass to where they sat alone on a last island of sand. What a race! Our shorts were soaking wet after all that splashing and sloshing, but we got there in time to beat the tide. We grabbed our shoes just as the water covered the sand, right where they'd been sitting. Grandfather told me our shoes wouldn't have been the first to be taken by the tide. Then we slowly walked back, hand in hand, across the barnacles and rocks towards our boat in the harbor. It was time to go in and make dinner. We were going to eat out of the crab pot, and I'd never been so hungry. Now inside the cabin, I hear the ship's clock chime and I count the bells. Ding, 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 ding. And I know it's 8 o'clock. It's too early to go to bed, but Grandfather told me on my boat, you get up with the sun. I hear Grandfather moving about the galley, putting the kettle on to boil and stowing the dishes we washed after supper. I hear him fiddle with a broken bracket on the creaky cupboard door, and I hear him slide the griddle onto its rack and then fasten the latch to keep it in place. Grandfather told me everything on a boat has to be buttoned down in case of a storm. I hear Grandfather flick the knob of the radio to check the weather for tomorrow, then click it off again. And I think, I'm so glad to be here. And I hug myself and wriggled down further in my cozy bunk. And I'll never forget how a month ago I wished harder than I'd ever wished before. I squeezed my eyes tightly shut, held my breath, crossed my fingers, and concentrated really hard on the one thing I wanted more than anything in the whole world, to be with Grandfather on his boat. Just the two of us. I imagined myself snuggled up next to him while he played cards at the table. Then I blew and blew until the birthday candles were all blown out and I had barely a whisper of breath left. And a little later, like magic, the phone rang and it was Grandfather. And I think sometimes wishes really do come true. Waiting for sleep, I listen again to the rap, rap, rapping of lines on masts and the snap, snap, snapping of sailboat flags fluttering in the wind. I hear the clap, clap, clapping of someone's loose shutter banging on the bulkhead over the hatch, and I hear the yap, yap, yapping of a dog on a boat somewhere in the marina. And I hear the water slap, slap, slapping against the boat, and it's saying hush, hush, hush. And I hear the sails rustling and flap, flap, flapping, and they're saying shh, shh, shh. Inside, I hear Grandfather playing a game of solitaire, shuffling the cards and tap, tap, tapping them on the table. And I think they're the nicest sounds in the world. The lines chiming against the masts in the marina are playing a lullaby. Chink, 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 plink, 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 and clink, clink, clink. And they're saying, time to sleep. Go to sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. So I snuggle down to sleep deep under my covers while the boat rocks and rocks back and forth along the dock. Great sounds to listen to on a boat, like the one in this book or the one on mine. Hopefully I'll be able to keep reading to you each week, and I encourage you to send me a read-along video. Maybe at home you're practicing your reading. Send it to me and I can help you connect with the cue as well. Thanks for watching. See you next week.